What's going on, YouTube family? Welcome to Automotive Life. My name is Lucky, and today we're going to be talking about why Hertz is dumping Tesla. So I'm sure you guys have seen this story all over the news. It's making waves. It's a very big deal. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about Hertz, their background, and what led them to actually make the deal with Tesla, and now what happened and why they're actually walking away from this deal, and what this means for other rental car companies following their same footsteps. Now, first, Hertz is a very forward-thinking rental car company. It's actually one of my favorite. And back in the day, they were the first company to let you rent basically a Shelby GT 350 Mustang Hertz edition with a manual to rent and actually drive around during the day or take it to the actual track and have some fun with it. They offered track insurance. They did a bunch of special things. So that's why Hertz got my respect. But with this forward thinking led them to get more corporate accounts. They had special things. They're one of the first companies to offer membership rewards and things like that. So this way, for frequent flyers and frequent travelers, they can get more credits on their rental car platform. But unfortunately, the pandemic happened and Hertz got shut down and had to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy because obviously nobody needs cars when the world is shut down. Now, a good thing came out of this bankruptcy. Hertz got lean and mean. They basically got rid of a lot of the fluff that they weren't going to do. They focused more on corporate accounts. They made an amazing deal with American Express, and they actually wanted to do another thing that kind of thought out of the box. They wanted to be the first company to go full EV. Now, Hertz's major plan was to be the first major mover in this particular market and kind of capture it. So they decided to work a deal out with Tesla where they would be purchasing 100,000 cars. Also, when the news came out that Hertz was going to be purchasing 100,000 cars from Tesla and they're going to be working together with this first full push of EV rentals, both of their stocks went up. The mainstream media was praising both parties, saying this is going to be a great thing, great step forward in the right direction, because at that time, EVs were very high demand. People loved these things, and Tesla at that time were still selling cars at MSRP, so they had a really great reputation. People were excited that, okay, this is the next move forward. So I'm going to give you guys some numbers. Hertz owns about 20% of all the rental cars in the United States, but they owned 60% of all the EVs for rentals in the United States. So let those numbers sink in. That showed you how much of a chunk and how much of the piece of pie that Hertz took up when it made this deal with Tesla. They figured if they went all in and being the first mover on this market, that they would capture all this market share and be able to lead the way. And unfortunately, it's not really going Hertz's way. They thought the demand for renting out EVs would be much more, and unfortunately it's not, and I'm gonna tell you why. So I remember the first time I went to the Las Vegas airport here and went to the hub to pick up some cars that I purchased from Enterprise, and I saw all these new shiny Teslas. Everybody was excited. The people up front were excited. The people that were working in the shop were excited because they figured, okay, it's EVs, it's less maintenance. It's going to solve the shop some problems, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. And it's something different. They were the trend makers. They were the trendsetters. Everybody was basically watching to see what Hertz was going to do with these EVs. Now, I even remember telling people that if you're thinking about buying an EV, you should probably go to Hertz and actually rent a Tesla for a few days just to see what it's like to live with day in and day out. And I think they got a lot of business from that in the beginning. A lot of people rented them just because, Teslas were new and everybody was excited. And they were talked about quite a bit during the pandemic because they were actually the only manufacturer that were selling cars at MSRP. They weren't charging people outrageous amounts of money. So they got a lot of people to go towards Tesla. Now, unfortunately, after about a year, they realized that the demand has simply slowed down. The cars were just sitting there. Now, I remember going there to purchase a few of these wreck cars that Hertz had, and when I went down to the backyard, I saw all these Teslas lined up. And when I asked the guy, like, why are all these Teslas here? Are these new ones? Are they being, defleeted? Can I make bids on them? Can I make offers? They're like, no, these are cars that are ready for rental, but they're not renting, so we keep them out here. Now, traditionally, there's a holding yard where all these cars stay, and then as cars get rented, they move them to the terminal inside the airport, so this way they can go out with the customers. But all these cars were just sitting here collecting dust. After this, Hertz decided to do a lot of internal investigation. Like, why aren't these cars renting? What's wrong with them? Is it something we're doing? Is it something wrong with the car? And there's a few things that came up. The first thing is they realized they were cannibalizing their own luxury department. Now, Hertz does have a lot of luxury cars to rent out, but the problem was they replaced a lot of those luxury cars with these Teslas. So now all their luxury cars rented out, they were losing all that market share from other manufacturers or other companies because their Teslas were sitting on the sideline. So after realizing that, they said, okay, we need to buy more regular luxury cars to offset the market, and we'll just let the Tesla sit here. And another reason, which is no surprise to most people, is the fact that people complained about charging their cars. Now, if you own a Tesla, it's very simplistic. You guys already have your account set up. You can literally rent the car. As soon as you sit in there, it knows it's a rental. It hooks up to your app. You can go to any supercharging station, plug it in, takes your credit card. You're good to go. Don't even have to do anything, and you're out the door. Now, if you're a regular person that doesn't own a Tesla, it's a lot more complicated. Back then, the app was a pain in the butt, and they would not let you enter a rental car under your name. So it was kind of tricky. And then some of the third-party charging stations that were out there, unfortunately, didn't take credit cards. You had to sign up for an account, email them, put your credit card on file, and people didn't like that. It started making charging a little more complicated. And so even though there was charging stations all across here in Las Vegas, a lot of these ones were set up different ways and are owned by different companies. So that was one of the people's biggest gripes, is the fact that they didn't have the easy way of charging it compared to obviously picking up gas at your local gas station. So Hertz realized, after seeing their sales slow down and people really not wanting to rent these cars on a regular basis, they needed to do something quick because they had these cars just sitting there costing them millions of dollars. So what did they do? They decided to work with Uber. Now, back in the day, a lot of these rental car companies had programs with Uber and Lyft to give them cars for their drivers. Now, this was a great thing. It was huge here in Vegas, but unfortunately, a lot of the rental car companies winded up pulling out because the Uber drivers would absolutely beat the shit out of the cars. So at this point, Hertz needed to do something to get some money on their balance sheet. So what did they do? They said, you know what? Let's make a deal with the devil. We're going to give Uber some of our cars to rent out. And it winded up working out pretty good. In the beginning, I have a friend here that's renting these cars. They were charging him $400 a week as one of the test pilots to rent these Teslas to go out there and make money. And it worked out great. He was happy because he saved gas. If he was sitting somewhere idling, he wasn't burning up gas. It was comfortable. People liked it. It was a great conversation starter when he picked people up. So everybody was happy. Tesla was happy because their cars were out there being used by Hertz. Hertz was happy because these Uber drivers are driving him around. And my friend was happy because he didn't have to put miles on his car. He could just rent this nice Tesla for $400 a week. And unfortunately, it didn't last that long. Hertz came back and told my friend that was driving Uber that he needs to pay $600 a week to cover the maintenance and the miles that he's putting on the car. So now he's upset because he's getting charged more. Uber's still paying him the same, and Hertz is not making enough money because they can get more money from renting it as a luxury vehicle at $100 to $200 a day, and now they're getting stuck with this. So at the end of the day, nobody won out of that situation. So as we start to move forward, you're going to see 20,000 Teslas from these programs hitting the market. So if you see a bunch of Model 3 Teslas with 60 to 80,000 miles that are 1 to 2 years old, you know they probably came from Hertz. Believe it or not, that's not the main reason why Hertz is walking away from Tesla. We're going to talk about the maintenance of the vehicles. Now, when I go down to the Hertz yard to buy some of the wrecked cars, I talk to the guys in the shop all the time. And the first thing they told me was, where do we get parts? Because if anybody's ever trying to buy parts for a Tesla, they realize it's a pain in the butt. And Hertz is self-insured, which means that they do a lot of their own repairs mechanically and body-wise inside their own facilities. So every time somebody bumps a wheel, puts a dent in the fender, cracks a headlight, Hertz doesn't send it out. Hertz fixes it themselves. And once again, if you've ever purchased parts from Tesla, you can know it's a pain in the butt. You try to call somebody at the parts department, there's nobody to call. Nobody picks up the phone. You got to physically go down there sometimes. I remember the shop manager telling me that they had some special portal that they had to order parts from through some sort of iPad to get there. And every time they did, the people that were on the other line didn't understand why Hertz owned so many cars and why they were getting parts. And it was a nightmare. So they had to physically go down there in person to pick up parts. And the other thing that they didn't like was the fact that the cost of the parts were astronomical. To fix, let's say, a Chevy Malibu hitting the front end would be a quarter of the cost of fixing a Tesla that was wrecked in the front end. Also, you can call Chevy and say, where is this headlight? Where is this bumper? And they will give you exact times and dates of when the parts are going to come in. And if something is back ordered, and they'll literally tell you, okay, it's back ordered, it's going to take a month. 2 months to get in. So at least you know. With Tesla, everything's always, it's on order, it's on back order. We don't know. It gets here when it gets here. So they had several of these Model 3s that were hit in the first week, sitting there for 3 to 6 months waiting for parts to come in. Unfortunately, with Hertz, they have to repair everything to an insurance quality repair. So even though the car was very new, they didn't want to order used parts. I remember going to the shop manager saying, hey, I have some used headlights and taillights. I can give them to you guys for a really cheap rate because you guys let me buy some of your wrecked cars just to help you guys get these cars back on the road. And the manager was upset because he goes, I actually found parts on eBay that I showed Hertz that we could buy, and they wouldn't let me do it because they had to be brand new parts from Tesla itself. So they were basically tied to Tesla with their cars and also tied to Tesla when it comes to buying parts. And I believe this is one of the straws that actually broke the camel's back when Hertz had to make a decision from actually walking away from Teslas, because they realized that there's no easy way to fix these cars. There's no definitive plan on what timeline they will get when it comes to parts. Do you guys remember me saying that one of the straws that broke the camel's back was the actual maintenance and getting parts of these Teslas? Well, I'm going to tell you the one thing that totally broke the camel's back, and this is the main reason why Hertz is leaving Tesla. And the main reason is money. Now, this isn't real money. This is just my prop money I use for these videos, but it's all about the resale value. Now, to give you guys a little business tip, every rental car company defleets every 2 years. This is very important because they want to hit that depreciation curve just right. And this is why I say that most rental car businesses go out of business every 18 to 24 months, because they make all this money, they rob the piggy bank, and if they don't do things right and pay down depreciation, when they go to get rid of their older fleet is when they wind up owing way too much money on it. And this is a very important matrix when it comes to owning a rental car company. And this is why I believe that the main reason why Hertz is walking away from Tesla is because of the resale value numbers that they're getting for these Model 3s. Now, I had to write all these numbers down so this way I make sure I get everything straight. Now, Hertz purchased these Model 3s for around $48,000. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower that and drop it to $45,000. So take $45,000 times 100,000 vehicles, and this is going to let you know how much money Hertz is going to be losing over the next few years. EVs lost about 35% of their value in the last 12 months. Now, half of this is because obviously demand is not there, financing is getting tougher, and there's so many new EVs to choose from. But the major thing is actually Tesla and Elon Musk. Elon Musk decided to lower the prices of the Teslas because obviously sales were going down and they need to be more competitive because other EV manufacturers were coming into the market. Now, a lot of people were excited because, oh, you're lowering the prices, but they didn't think about the people that bought it the year before. So if you could buy this car brand new for $50,000 last year, but today you could buy it for $45,000, what's that going to do to your resale value of the car you bought last year, or the resale value of your car that you bought 2 years ago? With Elon lowering the price 4 to 5 times last year, he literally screwed millions of people out of millions of dollars when it comes to the resale value of their vehicles. So just take that into point. So if you take 35% off of the $45K, you're looking at $29,225,000. Now, this is what you would expect to pay for one of these used Model 3s on the market. But you got to remember, these are rental cars. If you have a rental car and it's on the Carfax, traditionally dealers, banks, and regular people will give you less money because they're assuming that the car has been ridden really hard. So let's take an additional 5% off the vehicle value. Now that drops us down to $27,787. But we have to remember that the average American only drives 12 to 15,000 miles a year. So if after 2 years, they're going to have maybe at the most 30,000 miles. Most of these cars that are putting up for sale right now by Hertz, the first batch of 20,000, is averaging anywhere from 60 to 80,000 miles. So let's take off an additional 10% because of higher miles. So after we take off that 10%, we're left with $25,008. So in 2 years, they've lost almost $20,000 in value on these vehicles, and they're much more higher miles, so they're not desirable, and they're just going to be sitting there. So that lets you know that they're going to be losing millions of dollars over the next few years on all these cars as they start to defleet. Now, the thing that set the media world on fire was the fact that Hertz actually said that when they get rid of these first 20,000 Teslas, they're not going to be replacing them with other Teslas or any other EVs. They're going to be replacing these cars with traditional ICE vehicles, which is internal combustion engine. So they're going to be going out and buying regular cars to replace their EVs. And unfortunately, this is the trend we're going to see moving forward. I see a lot of rental car companies watching Hertz, realizing that they didn't do very well with EVs, so they're going to be skittish if they're going to buy or grow their EV market even more. And on top of that, I remember, I don't know if it was Kelley Blue Book or Automotive News, but they put out a report, 1 out of every 3 people that traded in an EV wind up going back to an ICE vehicle. And so little things like this are starting to show the market that the EV market is not as hot as what they thought it was. Now, not saying the EVs are not great. There's actually some really cool ones. I'm actually next week going to drive the Cadillac, Lyric. Looks super cool. Excited to rent that thing out for the day and have some fun with it. But I think that people are still a little skittish when it comes to leaving their cars behind. But anyways, I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching. I'd love to get your opinion on what you guys think of this current story. Do you think this is a trend that's going to keep getting worse when it comes to EVs? How much lower do you think EV resale value is going to go? Because we're watching a lot of these cars hit some really crazy numbers. Like, I actually love the Audi e-tron. I think it's a very cool car. The interior is gorgeous, and they're selling for about 60% of what they sold for last year, which is insane because I remember a few people that were paying over $20,000 over MSRP to get their hands on this first generation e-tron. But anyways, once again, put in the comment section below what you guys think of the market, what's going on, and just your overall opinion. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you learned anything, and also follow me on Instagram at Lucky Lopez, and we'll see you next video.